reasons Austin Energy is a major responsibility for the Austin City Council. That's why this group of nonprofit organizations together host this series of forums focused on Austin Energy. The participating organizations are Public Citizen, Seed Coalition, Sierra Club, Solar Austin, Texas Rose, Clean Water Action, Austin Climate Action Network, Texas Drought Project, First Unitarian Universalist Green Sanctuary Ministry, and the Wildflower Unitarian Universalist Church. Before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and go over a few ground rules. The candidates are all going to be given 1 minute for an opening statement and then 1 minute for a closing statement. The time allotted to responding for each of the questions will be stated at the beginning of the question. Jim, you are going to be helping me keep time, and you will be showing cards to the candidates to indicate how much time the speaker has remaining. Because of the large number of candidates that we have today and the number of questions, we are going to be asking y'all to please respect the time limits and to end your responses as soon as the time is up. This is a forum, not a debate, so time will not be allotted for rebuttals. In order to allow all the candidates an opportunity to be heard, we ask that you remain quiet until the end of the forum. After we conclude with our questions, there will be time to mingle with the candidates and ask any additional questions that you may have. By random selection, Jose Valera will get to start the opening statements, and we will then proceed to the right to your candidate's left. We are going to,
Sorry, jumping in.
No. We're going to be alternating who gets to respond first between the candidates, while also alternating between districts. And Kaiva will be walking in front of y'all to help you with the mics. So let's get started.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right. First, thank you for inviting all of the candidates here to speak with you. I know we all sincerely appreciate it. My name is Jose Valera. I'm number 8 on the ballot. I'm a 5th generation Austinite. I was appointed to West Point in 1996 by Congressman Doggett, then served in the Army for 5 years after that. In 2009, graduated from University of Texas Law School. Have been practicing intellectual property law for the last 5 years. And then in 2012, opened and continued the family business, which was Tamale House. The primary reason that I entered into this race was because Austin is undergoing tremendous growth and change, and I think that it's important that we get someone on council who is representative of our district and at the same time has the ability and the capability to navigate and preserve our neighborhoods through that growth and change. And again, number 8 on the ballot, and I thank you for the invite.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ricardo Tubios Bonilla. I'm American by choice, and I have a pronouncement to make. This being the Energy Forum, here and now I will announce my cultural reform plan that will make Austin light unto the cities. By cultural, I mean political, economic, social, and educational, the whole ball of wax. The 10-1 political beachhead needs a cultural reform. It's time for the second shoe to fall. My cultural reform plan is based on this work of mine, universalization. Herein, I'm proposing constituting the universal sector to work alongside the private and public sectors of the economy. Henceforth, the funding of schools and colleges at the city level would come from energy, water, and recycling resources. And at the state and national level, oil and gas would be used to finance universities and research centers. Education and the universal sector will be judicially sovereign, economically independent, and politically autonomous. Our cultural reform plan would effectively put an end to driving people from their homes, elevate education to a higher register, and bring about a bountiful economic time for the middle class. Lastly, I urge the citizenry to get behind this universal sector cultural reform plan for the reconstitution of Austin by triads. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Julian Limon Fernandez, and I'm also running. I think the main purpose for all of us to run is to win. I think we all stand for just about the same thing here. We want to make a betterment for our community. We definitely have to look into the energy issues that are facing us, and especially the poor sides of East Austin, Montopoulos, and South Austin. We do need a lot of help in those areas, and I'm going to be here to help those people out and also to be part of the growing energy that we need to have here and the clean air that we need to emit because the ozone is killing us, and it's just not good for us when we have tons of particles in the air, and we need to keep a clean, safe environment for our citizens here in Austin.
Good evening. My name is Sean Ireland. I'm a candidate for Austin City Council District 3. We may not get to all the points tonight that we'd like to make, so if you would go to IrelandForAustin.com and look up my action plan, you can read more about my platform there in more detail than we may have room to. I'm an 8th generation native Texan, and I'm also an Eagle Scout. I have lived my family has lived our entire lives respecting the unique nature and environment of Texas. We live in the desert. As you know, even though we've been blessed with rain, we do not have water to spare. Our aging water infrastructure leaks 4 billion gallons of water every single year. I'm the infrastructure candidate in this race. I will see to it that for the first time, we will replace, not just repair, but replace the pre-World War II cast iron pipes that a lot of people in District 3 rely on for their water. Austin is experiencing exponential growth. We need to be more proactive with our energy solutions. If I can get the 10-1 council behind it, one of the things I would like to do is to set up a mini solar systems for low-income housing. These won't be able to take care of the entire amount of solar that they use, but it could take one major appliance off the grid, such as an air conditioner or a refrigerator.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mario Cantu. Born and raised here in Austin, Texas. Grew up in South Austin, off of South Congress, which is now called SoCo. My mom's house, she paid $20,000 for it way back in the day. Now it's worth about $800,000. So things have changed. Things are moving. Things are progressing. I've been a climber for over 30 years. I've done first ascents here in the U.S. and overseas abroad. So I've seen how transportation and energy are being used in other countries and how they're being utilized. We have a big change going on right now with climate, as we know. Every day someone's being impacted in the U.S., whether it's flooding, hurricanes, or tornadoes. So we need to be very vigilant about what's going on and making sure that we have really good renewables for the future and that we actually take care of ourselves. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Fred McGee, a 20-year Austinite, originally from Germany. There's several things that distinguish me from not just the people that you see in front of you, but from all of the other candidates running for the City Council. I am the only candidate running for the City Council who is a credentialed energy auditor, builder, weatherization expert, and rainwater harvesting professional. Because I'm from Germany and have family members who are familiar with German solar programs, the Energiewende, I'm also very familiar with how Germany does these initiatives. My advisor, my energy advisor, is Tyson Slocum of Public Citizen in Washington, D.C. Another one is Shalini Ramanathan. These are people with international levels of expertise and knowledge on issues of energy. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you very much.
Susana Almanza, native of East Austin and the only native Mexican-American woman running for District 3. Through my work at FODEG, we have worked to relocate and close the toxic tank farm, which was made of 6 of the largest oil companies in the world, who were polluting our air and our water and were causing health problems to our community. We also took on BFI, the recycling, which was the second largest waste management facility in the United States, who are creating a mini landfill in East Austin and also impacting the health of our community and also polluting the air. We also work with other groups to close down the Holly Power Plant, which was the largest stationary source of NOx emissions, particulate matters, and also electromagnetic fields. At the national level, we worked to pass the Executive Order on Environmental Justice 12898 that was passed in February 11, 1994, and I will work to bring a balance between nature and humanity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christopher Herster. My campaign is Christopher for ATX, but please call me Chris. All my friends do. That's what I prefer. I'm the better late than never candidate. Got in on the last day, the last hours. Some of the reasons I got in, well, I'm a master's student at Texas State University currently. I completed my degree in public administration after 25 years of successful small business time here in Austin and all over the state. The reason I got into this race late was, and in regards to energy, Austin Energy, our energy is getting to become less accessible to low-income and middle-income residents. We've got to get the politics out of our energy business and make it affordable. If you ever look at your electric bill, you spend $50 every month before you even turn on the light or turn on the spigot. And we need to lower our bills. We need to get control of this. I support passing the money.
My name is Eric Rangel, and I'm running for Austin City Council District 3. I was born here in Austin, grew up in Lockhart, graduated from Texas State, and I traveled the world a little bit, and now I live and work here. I run because I want to be a voice for District 3. Whether you live on either side of the river or side of 35, it doesn't matter to me. I want to represent you. And like many of you, I want to see Austin be not just a state leader, but a global leader when it comes to renewable energy. And I look forward to winning office to accomplish those goals. So I look forward to tonight's discussion. I will make it short and simple because I know we got a lot of things to talk about. So more information about myself, you can go to voterangel.com, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Ken Phillips. I am running for District 3 also. I'll be second on the ballot. I was raised in a military family, a Navy family to be specific. I traveled all over the country constantly throughout my early childhood and growing up. The first opportunity that I had, I came to Austin and I moved into this district. And I immediately saw that Austin was being run by the same crowd, the same group of people over and over again, and we were in need of breaking that monopoly over our city council. And now that we finally have this opportunity, I wanted to step up and, like my family all had done, choose this time to serve my community this time instead of being military, but as a city council member. So that's why I've jumped into this race, and I'd like us to see if we can't bring some accountability to Austin Energy, and through that, let's bring those bills down, let's bring some affordability to our district. Thank you. My name is Kent Phillips.
Thank you to whoever brought me the flowers.
I thought those were mine.
Good evening, I'm Delia Garza. I'm running in District 2, which is the district we're in right now. I'm a former Austin firefighter. I spent my entire career as a firefighter in South Austin. That's also where I bought my first home in the Sweetbriar neighborhood, which I've owned for 11 years, which is now District 2. I am now an attorney, most recently an assistant attorney general in the child support division of the AG's office. I have committed my career to public service. I have a long history of fighting for working class families. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk about these very important issues. Energy issues are environmental issues, and environmental issues are social justice issues, which matter greatly to the working class families, just like the one that I grew up in, especially in Austin as a whole, but especially in District 2. So thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is John Shepard. Apparently my campaign slogan should be better late than never. I mean, no disrespect. I had a screw in a tire, and very glad to be here. Very glad to see you all here. Always excited when I see people engaged in the process. And as a person who's grown up in Austin, I'm a product of Austin schools. Had some great teachers, going back to my science teachers at Betachek Junior High, and went to LBJ High School. I have 2 kids that I put through Austin schools. And I'm running to give the voters a choice of something different than the status quo. The historic geographic representation that we have before us is that opportunity that we have to show that someone can run a campaign and not have it be financed by out of town, out of state, out of pocket interest. I would appreciate your vote. My website is johncshepard.org.
All right, thank you all so much, and now we're going to go ahead and move on to the questions. This is going to be a 1-minute question, so please make sure to keep to that time. We all want to know what your position on the City Council is what is your position on City Council maintaining full responsibility for governance of Austin Energy, transferring authority to an independent board, or privatizing the utility? Debbie?
I absolutely believe that it is extremely necessary that the city, it stays under the purview of the city council. As you stated before, it's the hugest asset for the city, $3.8 billion, and the governance of that needs to be at the accountability of city council. And so if you don't like, you were the shareholders of Austin Energy, and if you don't like the way it's being run, you have the ability to vote that person out. So it needs to stay under the purview of the city.
I'll state unequivocally that I'm against the privatization of Austin Energy. No way, no how should that be even considered. It's a jewel. It's unfortunately been used as a cash cow way too often for the last 30 years. But without direct oversight by the council and not a group of cronies appointed by the council to shirk responsibility to them, it needs to be overseen by the council. That's the only way that we can ensure that we don't get involved in more STNPs, that we don't open up more coal-fired plants just because it makes the bottom line work that day. It needs to be something that the council is directly accountable for, and whoever is on the council, we need to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that it's run not just with the interest of the environment, of course it should be, but anybody that's ever dealt with them, and I deal with Austin Energy on a weekly, if not daily basis, the customer service is terrible. That is one spot that needs to be improved, and more importantly, we need to oversee the headquarters that they're building just down the street. And instead of building this $70 million headquarters that meets everybody's dreams, maybe look for a more cost-effective.
All right, yes, thank you for the question. I think it's very, but we need to address the causes of things, and there are 3 sectors. There are things that are essentially private, like making ballpoint pens. There are things that are essentially public, like police, fire, and all that. And there are things that are not essentially either one. Normally, these are called parastate companies, like light or water or energy and all that. What I am proposing is, instead of the either-or solution, instead of private, public, and if it's not private, put it in the public. The problem with that is that the public sector ends up being the catch-all. And then we have this humongous government, and that requires taxes. I think that it should be used to create the third or triadic sector called the universal sector. And this should be used to fund education. Because what's driving people from their homes is precisely, okay, property taxes, and we can find a way to fund education, and I think this would be the way to fund taxation, to fund education.
Start with me and I'll go that way. Well, you're picking on the fat one now. Well, first of all, what I would do, before I even take office, is I would expect a full audit with Austin Energy. They need to be accountable, and transparency has to be right when we start on day one. It's apparent that everybody's using the word cash cow. I call it wasteful spending. Sometimes they throw money out there just to satisfy several groups and they don't want to be seen in a bad light. But it's not about being in the public eye. You know, they have to be responsible to that money that's coming in. Our bills are going up. As a matter of fact, everyone saw that it's going up quite a bit. And yet, they have a big surplus. Now, how do you explain that? You know, that's why we need a full audit and transparency with Austin Energy. And we will keep it.
I'd like to say that I absolutely believe that Austin Energy should be under council control. It is the only way to ensure that under the more accountable 10-1 system, that true transparency comes to Austin Energy. And I would just like to thank Mr. Fernandez for joining me as, I guess, now the only 2 candidates in the entire city in any municipal race that is on the record calling for a full independent audit of Austin Energy. I've heard that this will take at least $50 to $100 million in savings that we can either pass on to the customer as lower electric bills, or we could use those savings to put into renewable energy programs. I would like to see schools we have a tremendous rooftop potential for photovoltaic solar, which I actually have a certificate of PV in systems from ACC.
The answer to the question is, yes, it should stay with city council. The reason why is I wouldn't want somebody else spending my money that I didn't know who was spending it. In May of 2013, myself and many other individuals, I was vice president of Battle Bend Springs Homeowners Association and was also with ANC. We actually, there was a bill 410 coming through the Texas legislature of Kurt Watson that wanted to change this. He actually wanted to take this city council and give it to somebody else, let them do their own work on that. And we fought very hard, myself and a bunch of individuals. We came together as a community and we emailed thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and we prevailed to keep this. So I've done it once as a citizen, and I will do it again as a councilman. Thank you.
When I first moved here in 1995, Austin Energy walked on water. Now it's walking on mud. How did that come to happen? And what happened? Well, a lot of things happened. And how is it that our current mayor and a former mayor have floated this idea of privatizing our most valuable asset? Well, it's a complicated answer, and there's no way you can do justice to it in 60 seconds. But I will say this. I'm a city council dais. I'm somebody with a PhD level understanding of energy markets. Okay? And I will not be bamboozled by the nonsense and BS by the special interests that permeate that utility. Okay? I will be able to exercise the accountability that's necessary because I will know what they know, and I will be able to call them out on it when they are not being factual or when they're playing political games.
Yeah, I too am for the city council retaining control of Austin Energy. I oppose any privatization of Austin Energy. Those are funds that provide dividends for a lot of programs and projects. They're funds that we're paying into when we pay our electric bills, our water bills, those particular bills that we the people need to control. And so we do need to have access to those particular funds to make sure that they're used, whether it's rebate programs, solar, different issues that are concerning our communities. And so I also, it's very important that the public have control, because when we say the city council, we're really talking about public control, and that we have a voice in that process of what goes on in Austin Energy. And if you're to put it into privatization, we would lose that control, and we would lose our right to also determine how funding will be used and how programs will continue.
Well, I don't have a PhD, but I can give you a working man's answer. What we currently have doesn't work. I'm against privatization, but well, the current system we have, I don't call it a cash cow, I call it a slush fund. Council has over the years been able to hide other expenditures that they want inside of our energy companies, our water department, and our electric department. We've got to get the politics out. The politics are what led to going 17 years without a rate increase, and then all of a sudden hitting everybody with a rate increase at the same time property taxes and everything else was going up. So we've got to have some kind of a system in there. Maybe it's hybrid, but we've got to get the politics out. You can't have somebody that's worried about getting elected in 2 or 3 years deciding on if we're going to have rate increases or what we're going to do with our utility. We need to start giving it back to the people. We take so much money out of Austin Energy. We need to be giving it back and putting some, I'd like to have solar in place. Solar out in West Texas is great, but if everybody could put solar panels on their house affordably, then that's what we need to be doing with our money.
I don't have a degree, I don't have a PhD, but I do have a degree with concentration in business. And I think the challenge that we have with Austin Energy is running it like a business, but providing affordable rates for people. And I think that's the challenge it's going to take for the new council when they get in there. And no disrespect to Sean, but I've actually heard a lot of candidates talk about auditing Austin Energy. And I think that's a great idea. I think we may not have said it at the soapbox as Sean has said it, but we definitely, I think a lot of us agree with that. And on council, I would definitely do the same. So I'm for keeping it in council's hands. Like everyone has said, it's pays dividends in the long run to have a voice in knowing what goes on with Austin Energy. And that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Chris is onto something, that we've got to get the politics out of it, and I'll go ahead and be the one candidate who is for privatization. My family, actually my brother, who's a naval aviator stationed out in San Diego, just had solar panels put on his house by Elon Musk's company, Solar City. His electricity bill has gone way down. He's looking at buying an electric car now so he can charge his car off the sun's energy, and he's looking at lower expenses and better environmental effort on his own individual attempts. So I think that's something we ought to be promoting, and we ought to let those kinds of companies come into this city and use their innovative ideas to drive down our costs at home and help the environment. And I think anyone who's saying, well, this is money that we have to keep pulling from energy, that means we're taxing energy and we're not making it more affordable.
I'm for City Council maintaining full responsibility of Austin Energy. And the primary reason for that is that the City Council will be responsible to the citizens, the shareholders of Austin Energy. And I think we should view Austin Energy as a responsible business. There is an obligation to make sure that on the business side, Austin Energy is financially stable, can provide competitive rates, and is sound as a business. But I also want to stress the responsible part of that business. Austin Energy also has responsibilities with respect to the environment and with respect to social issues. And so as long as it is still in the control of City Council and beholden to the shareholders, you all, and we can ensure that it continues to shift from coal energy resources to renewable and sustainable resources. And we can also ensure that as part of that responsibility, that we maintain affordability for the lower income and middle income folks in Austin. Thank you.
All right, this is going to be a 1-minute question. Where do you stand on achieving Austin's climate protection goal, including implementation of the goal adopted by City Council in the Affordable Energy Resolution of making Austin energy generation resources carbon-free by 2030? Mr. Fernandez?
Well, that's a good number to try to achieve these goals by 2013, but quite frankly, I don't think 16 years is enough time to go totally carbon-free. At some point in time, we will achieve that. but quite reality that is not gonna happen. Who are we kidding? At the rate that we're going right now, we have the reckless wall bunch at City Hall right now that is throwing out wasteless money out there. Austin Energy should focus more on providing these services and affordable energy to the whole city of Austin, and not putting so much into the bio energy that they've created, which has cost us millions of dollars. We need to focus on our solar, of course, but we cannot give up on what we have right now, and we do need to make those rates a lot lower. And of course, we need to get rid of the bad carbon gases, and it will happen.
My family's home in East Texas is 100% off-grid solar powered. Total renewable energy is something that I have always wanted to provide for my family, and we finally have. I definitely see, I agree that it is a good number by 2030, but you know, if this has been put in plan, 15 years ago with a responsible council, that could have been achievable. I don't see that happening in 16 years. I feel that when we look towards renewable energy, we need to also factor in the affordability cost, because renewable energy, it makes a lot of people feel good, but the startup costs are very high when you think about renewable energy sectors that are coming online. They come with a hefty price tag, so we need to make sure that when we target certain types of renewable energy, we should always go for the most affordable kind, because there's one thing that has happened in District 3 is not only the property tax is pushing people out, but also their electric bills.
Personally, I think affordable energy resolution of 828 is nonsense. It is based on Generation Task Force report, which is an undocumented wish list. And it's not a real report. Perhaps most of the diplomatic answer is if you can support clean energy to the extent that it's affordable and the technological is feasible to have. I don't believe that, for instance, that you can reach such a large percentage of renewable energy or carbon-free energy without the cost-effective of storage. I think storage is going to be a concern that we have to really be thinking about. And there are some storages out there that we can consider, and it's only being used in 2 countries, the U.S. and Germany, and we probably need to be looking at that to retain storage for energy. Thank you.
Wow.
That's okay, you're done.
Well, as the German on the panel, and I want to make clear, I am German, not German American. I am a German national. German is my native language. I can explain things to Austin Energy in the original German. I can read these reports. Okay, I have forgotten more about how it's done in Germany than many of these people know. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I have family members who are solar installers in Germany. Now, the question is, can we do this? The truthful answer is I don't know, and I don't think anybody else does, but it matters as an aspirational goal. It's very important that we get serious about decarbonizing our operations. Our planet is in an emergency, okay? We can no longer fiddle-faddle around. We gotta get serious. One of the things that I advocate that I think can help us get there and unleash Austin's entrepreneurial energy is a feed-in tariff. That's how it was done in Germany. Imagine this, a lot of libertarians all of a sudden being incentivized to put solar on anything and everything that they own. And there's a guaranteed price. That's how it was done in Germany, that's how it can work here.
Well, I think it's a goal, and it's a goal that we need to set, because we have to start somewhere. And I think that we have to make sure that we begin to work at those goals, whether we start at commercial buildings, installing solar, wind turbines, and we also need to work making sure there's more funds for weatherization, so that low income and the working class people can also be contributing to the energy. We need to look at renewable energies. We need to make sure we phase out the Fayette coal. We need to make sure we get away from nuclear. All of these things that we need to be looking at in order to reach that goal is very important. And so I think that we need to, even though that goal is lofty, it's not the planet that's in danger or in crisis, it's humanity that is in danger and crisis. Because this planet has restarted over and over again. It knows how to cleanse herself. So we are the ones in crisis, and we have to do something about it. Thank you.
When the council made this vote last month, the feeling I had was about, kind of like the feeling everybody had with the water department. Conserve, conserve, we conserve, conserve, and you raise our rates. We had a goal, and now they want to move the bar up. And first, I think we should celebrate what we did do. We've made some strides. And as a city, I don't see anybody out celebrating the accomplishments that we've made. That being said, we do need to move forward. I'm for putting solar in place. We need to come up with a plan to put solar on everybody's house in Austin. We got a lot of flat roofs. Small businesses need this. I mean, the rates that are going, small businesses are seeing astronomical rate increases in their utilities, and that's just going to drive them out. This would also create a new industry, well, not a new industry, but add to an industry that we currently have, putting solar out on houses. And people want it. You know, the sad thing is in District 3, there's only about 23% homeowners, and we need to do something for our renters too.
I would have to agree with Fred and Susanna. It may not be a goal that we can obtain, but it's definitely a goal that we got to shoot for, and we got to start somewhere. That's part of the problem, is that it may be out of our reach, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for perfection. And when it comes to, I have to agree with Fred as well. I think we need to look at places like Germany. They're obviously the global leader when it comes to renewable energy, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. All we have to do is do what they do and bring it here. Something as simple as that. We don't need to. We can shape it to the way Austin feels and the way Austin does things. So that's the way I think it's the way it needs to be approached. Looking at Germany, looking at other places of how they do this, and obviously setting goals. Whether we reach them or not, that's not necessarily the situation. It's more of just set them and trying to push the limits over and over again as far as renewable energy. Thank you.
So the affordable energy resolution says we're going to be carbon free by 2030. That's cute. I think that's just a political stunt and almost doesn't even warrant a response. If this is going to happen, it's going to come from us. It's not going to come from a city council telling us that we have to do this. That's the wrong way about this. I myself already drive an electric car. I did that on my own volition because I do care about the environment and I felt I should be responsible for my own part. So that's what I do. If this is going to go on to others, other people are going to have to start coming up with these thoughts and ideas, and that's the way that we reach this point. And we're going to do that when we start freeing up the opportunities for companies like Solar City to come in here and take Austin Energy out of restricting their opportunity to come in and help us grow these ideas.
First, I think that we definitely need an aggressive shift towards renewable energy sources, starting or continuing with wind and solar. But that has to be done in an equitable manner. And I think that goals shouldn't just be aspirational. I think that we should set realistic goals and have metrics to achieve those goals. So I don't think this 2030 plan has that. And I also think that it's a little bit indicative of a previous political environment in which the environmental aspirations don't necessarily take into account the environmental justice issues. And so even if we could technically achieve this 2030 goal, it would put enormous stress on lower income houses. So I think that we need to go back and set more realistic goals. I mean, honestly, even divesting ourselves of the Fayetteville plant would take probably 16 years in litigation. So let's go back, let's set more realistic goals with metrics and then work to achieve those goals.
Let me try to catch up a bit. I think reality is socially reconstructed or constructed by the way we think. The way we think normally is either or, either it's private or it's public. I think we need to transition to the both and way of thinking, which means there's a triad in place, there's a third solution that's the creative part that we have to contribute. As far as the first question, I think there's a good, a bad, and a worse answer. The bad is for it to be under the city council. The worst would be to privatize it, actually. And the good one to me would be to create this universal sector, which would be the transcendence of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The synthesis would be the universal sector. I have all these ideas, as I said, I've written 6 books, and I'm trying to popularize these ideas on YouTube. So you are welcome to go to YouTube, and they're about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm trying to keep it, as they say, KISS, okay? Keep it simple, stupid, in YouTube, and I invite you. As far as this, I do support the 2030, carbon free.
I think this is a perfect example of why the city council needs to keep direct control as the board of directors for Austin Energy, because if you put the profit motive into Austin Energy, that's when a process like this goes by the wayside, and it's explained to the shareholders that we did this to make you money, and it's to explain to the citizens, sorry about that, we tried to save you some money. There's no reason why we can't achieve a carbon-free Austin Energy by 2030. It's 15 years, that's a fifth of a lifetime, depending on who you are and how you live. But I think more than just being carbon-free, we need to make the goal of being nuclear-free. The amount of water that the STMP wastes, and even for people that might be on the fence or might argue with you about climate change caused by carbon, there's no one that can deny the amount of mercury that's put into the atmosphere, and there's no one that can deny that we have ample opportunity, especially in District 2, Southeast Austin, to put plants, solar farms, and Decker Creek Power Plant would be a perfect example of that.
I'm absolutely supportive of this goal. I would disagree that it's cute and would say that it's imperative. But my only concern is making sure that we keep those renewable sources affordable, and I do believe there was the 2% affordability goal built into to this new goal. And the reason I say it's imperative is there was a great chart handed out at one of the candidate information sessions about carbon emissions exacerbate climate change, which leads to horrible things like drought and flooding, and then we're in a drought situation, but we need more water to continue producing, to release more emissions. So I think it's a great goal, and it's imperative of city leaders to do whatever they can to get us there.
This is a 1-minute question. What is your position on retiring Austin Energy's gas-fired Decker plant and coal-fired Fayette plant?
And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's imperative of us to be able to start depending more on renewables and start doing whatever we can to depend on renewables. Again, my concern is the affordability factor. I don't know where the research is right now is in being able to store the solar power. So I am concerned about peak hours. Where are we going to get our energy during peak hours when we're not able? I don't believe we're able to store solar just yet. But I do think we need to get those plants offline as soon as possible. I believe the Fayette plant is the one that's owned partially by Austin Energy's. So we can't. We'd have to, if we sold our part of it, it would just stay online and still be producing all the horrible things that it's producing. I do think it would be great to keep that and move it offline as quickly as possible. It's imperative to depend more on renewables as long as we can keep it affordable.
I must have watched too many movies in the 70s, even though I grew up in the 80s, because you always have to follow the money. I don't understand how we can look at a movie like China Syndrome, the Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon movie about the nuclear reactor that melted down, and 12 days after that movie opened up is when 3 Mile Island melted down. And we have to look last year to the reactor in Japan. So again, I think it's more than just retiring the Decker plant and the Fayette plant. And even though the LCRA does own half that plant, well, who do you think they're going to listen to? They're going to listen to us in this room. They're going to listen to the city council. The city council's had a real good relationship with the LCRA. And if we push them and hold their feet to the fire, that's the only way it's going to happen. We can't just throw up our hands and say, hey, China's opening up 30 coal power plants every year. We should keep ours open. That's a backwards way of looking at things. The Decker plant provides so much opportunity with its closure, not only as a basin to store water, but recreationally. It's already slated to close within a couple of years, and I think that's one of the few good things our recent city council has done.
We need to take a concerted effort to make sure that if we are going to truly be adherent to our own aspirations, that when you talk about renewable energy, we need to also keep in mind that more importantly than the installation of the power generator, almost as important, if not more important, is the capture and storage of that renewable energy. We could have solar panels on every square inch of rooftop in this entire city, and how would that help us on days like today? We need to make sure that if any time we think about taking it may be gas fired, it may be coal or whatever, but it's always producing electricity no matter what. And so I think that when we look at our platform for the future, that we need to make sure that we have dependable energy, because I think the last thing we want to do is to get ahead of ourselves and to have our hearts lead the way before the infrastructure is there, and then we have to deal with rolling brownouts or blackouts. Because I don't think anyone wants to deal with that. Remember summer of 2011, 100 days of 100-degree temperature? That's expensive.
I feel it sounds fine to replace these power stations until we ask the question of what to replace them with.
Exactly.
Personally, I support clean energy to the extent that it is affordable and technologically feasible. So we have to be looking at what is Jakarta, what is Dubai, what is Germany doing, what are other countries doing, and then also not only overseas, but what are we doing here in the US? And we need to come up with an idea into figuring out exactly what is being done in order to replace these engines when they're shut down. What's going to be the new engine, and how are we going to get it, and what's going to be the cost? So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you.
Well, what is Germany doing? Germany is receiving almost 30% of its energy from renewables, not as a city, as a country. The entire country. France, the nuclear utopia, buys energy from Germany, not commonly acknowledged. The answer is yes. We can and we should retire these plants, and we should retire them for good, because the goal is what? Decarbonizing our operations. The carbon emissions from these plants, unacceptable. Decker was as monumental an environmental injustice as the Holly Power Plant was. It is a massive source of point source pollution. It's unacceptable. That stuff is 20th century technology. We need to be moving into the 21st century. There are plenty of examples we can point to. This is not pie in the sky utopianism. It is being done now. The reason it hasn't happened is politics. That's one of the reasons we went to 10-1. I have the policy chops, and as you've already heard, I walk the walk as well.
I too believe that we should, and I feel and I agree that we should retire the gas-fired Decker plant and the coal-fired Fayette plant. And we do need to look at renewables. We need to look at solar. We need to look at wind, and Fred and others have stated, we do need to look at models that are already existing out there, and how do we move forward and implement those. because we have seen a great injustice of how these plants are in communities of color and how they are east of the highway. And so who are the most impacted and who are the most vulnerable population when it comes to these polluting facilities. And so I agree that we need to strive to them and then to look at other models that are existing. Thank you.
Well, nobody up here is gonna come out and say we shouldn't retire these, and it's true, we need to retire them, we need to improve our environment. My caution is to the affordability, though. We have a lot of, especially in District 3, we have a lot of people that struggling with affording their utility bills now. You know, and I'd like this current council to slow down and let 10-1 take care of this. This is the same council that gave us a biomass plant that is sitting idle that costs us millions of dollars. That's not being used and is not going to do us any good. So I want to close these down, but I want to slow down and make sure that we can keep our utility bills affordable to everyone in Austin. Not just the haves, but also to the people that are have-nots. We need to build for our needs and not for our wants. You know, we can reach these goals, but let's not price everybody out of town on the way to doing it.
I too am for retiring both plants, but I'm more of a sort of phasing them out, like many of my opponents have said. What are we going to replace it with? And I think in the time period that we can break up our renewable energies to replace them, I think that'll be the time that we can kind of switch that over. I think going cold turkey is not going to do anybody any good. So I'm more of a phasing out process than I am for just turning them off completely. And I think one final thing, I think we need to remember that the Decker plant, if I remember correctly, is near Lake Long. And that's a future water source for us that we need to look into as well. So I think, you know, it's going to be imperative that we definitely close that down. And like I think Fred was saying, it's just not closing them down, but to make sure that they never stay open again and control ownership of them so nothing ever happens to them again. Thank you.
I'd love to be able to tell you that I think we can close these down and make energy even cheaper for you. But I'm guessing if that were the case, we would have already done it. These are probably providing a lot of the energy that we use today, and to get rid of them is probably going to cost us more at the meter when you're using your energy in your home. I'd love to get rid of them and help the environment, but my impression that I've gotten from my potential constituents in this district is that their priority right now is on affordability. So I'm going to give that the priority it deserves, and I'm going to focus on that and not get rid of these plants so long as I think it's going to increase significantly the cost of energy to those people living in my district. That's it.
I support retiring these plants in a responsible and equitable way, certainly with considerations for the impact of affordability. But I think we definitely need to push forward and do a real cost analysis for focusing on the Decker plant or the Fayetteville plants. I would suspect, given the ownership issues with the Fayetteville and the legal hurdles and the financial hurdles created by that, I would suspect that the Decker plant would be easier to transition away from. And I think that as we do that, it's important not just to, shut down the plant and walk away, because there's still issues with the Holly Power plant for the people that are in that neighborhood, and studies and analysis on the lingering impacts of that. So I think as we focus on Decker, we need to make sure that we have that continuing plan in place to prevent and study and analyze and deal with the impacts of the fact that these plants have been in these locations for as long as they have.
All right, let me do a little background. I think there's a positive and a negative approach. The negative approach means stop doing this. But I think we need to think positively. There's a thing called fission, which is what happens in the sun, and that never took off. Why? Because there's never enough money to do research. And why is there never any money to do research? Because it's a long-range, a long-term proposal. The only way that there can be research is if we create this universal sector and all the oil and gas money be invested in research. And the universities, they have the physicists and the chemists and all the mathematicians and so on to make fission feasible, in other words, economically feasible. And once fission is harnessed, you can forget about all these little things, about solar and all these little things. I mean, that's just pennies, okay, compared to the energy that can be gotten from fission, but we have to invest money, all right? And I don't think we should follow Germany. All right? I think we are a nation of leaders, and I think we shouldn't follow anybody. I think we should be creative. Austin is a creative city. I think we should start that way. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, the visionaries, they thought that they had it right? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, on all these power plants. No, not now. I don't want them off. Yeah, they're bad for the environment, but it's not social responsibility on our part. Okay, this council has been on basis for over 8 years. Why right now? Why is it important to them right now? I think it's BS on their part. They should have been thinking about this 8 years ago. They should have been thinking about this 12 years ago. They should have been thinking about this 20 years ago. Why now? That's irresponsible on the city council right now. And no, we cannot afford to take these power plants down. It's bad for us, but we cannot afford it. You bring in something that's going to be safe and it's going to be working, then we can start talking about it. But we can't even talk about it right now because that's not in place and it's not going to happen. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
No, he did. No.
They started over here first.
They started it.
I forget where. I'll speak eventually. I'm not that vain. I can go last.
Okay, so this is going to be also a 1-minute question. What is your position on customer use of solar energy at homes and businesses? And what, if any, policy changes would you support?
Yes. I support on-bill financing, figuring out a way where if residents want solar energy, whether it's solar panels, wind here, it's going to be small wind. We can't do big wind. We have to do it by the coast or we have to do it in West Texas. So when it comes just to solar panels, that would be something to consider. And if they could do on-site billing, get tagged on that and have a low financing cost, I think that would be very good for individuals that want the opportunity to have solar within their home for renewable energies.
Thank you, Mario. I have solar in my house. I live and work in a 5-star green-built house that I personally constructed. It has a 5 kW PV array, as well as the first Stiebel Endhorn solar water heater in Austin that I also personally installed. The answer for me is I strongly support this. In Germany, the majority of the 30% figure that I talked about earlier is small cooperatives like farms and villages and individual micro units, distributed energy in other words, okay? That's what we want to encourage because that decarbonizes our operations. I'm a strong supporter of these things. And again, the mechanism that was used to achieve this was the feed-in tariff. I strongly support a feed-in tariff. Germany recently reformed aspects of its feed-in tariff just a few months ago, but the principle behind it is sound. If any of you do not know what a feed-in tariff is, come find me afterwards and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. A lot of places in the United States have that. It can be, it's debated, but I will make the case for you about why it works in Germany and why it can work here.
Okay, I definitely support solar energies in homes and businesses. And I think that this is something that we need to be using some of those funds from Austin Energy to make sure that low income and the working poor and the middle class can afford solar energy. Those are things that at this time that there's only a higher class, a higher income of people can afford solar panels at this time. We need to look at where do we get the solar panels, And I know that there are many countries where it's done very cheaply and that everyone can do it. And so I do agree that we need to work towards solar energy because it's one way to make it cost effective for everybody, but also to be able to use that energy, to share that energy. I'm for neighborhood sharing on solar energy so that the neighborhood becomes solar and then begins to share that solar within that neighborhood. And I think that that's one of the ways that we need to look at how we can share energy.
I've been preaching this since I got into the race a month ago today. My solar plan to plant solar on every house is to create a fund. Within this fund, the problem with the solar is that $11,000 you got to come up with to get it on after the rebate and after the tax incentives. Who's got $11,000? If we fund the $11,000 through Austin Energy, our customers, their repayment is equivalent to what they were already paying on a monthly basis for their utility bill. At the end of the time that they've matched that $11,000 of the cost of solar, which will drop drastically, then the solar belongs to them. So they've got that'll take about 5.5 years. So they've got almost 20 years of that solar where they have the ownership to it. You know, we have a lot of renters in District 3. I think we can work out the same kind of program with landlords, where they can put solar on their apartments or their duplexes or whatever, and kind of have the same kind of system. This is Austin. We can figure out anything.
I agree with everyone else. I think it's a good idea for us to go solar, especially when it comes to homes and businesses. You know, the problem that rises is obviously cost. So I think the best thing we need to do is make sure we have incentives for lower income families to provide solar panels for their house. Whether it's policies like rent-to-own programs or other things that we can come up with, I think that's the solution for it. And I think what Susanna was saying was a great idea too. I think when you do neighborhood grids and you will have energy throughout the neighborhood, I think when you share it, I think that's also a wonderful idea. So I don't think anybody's truly opposed to this. It's just like anything else, it's cost and affordability, and how do we, put that through and without being, with being frugal as far as everybody else, I think.
You know, you're right. I don't think any of us are opposed to this. I'm certainly not opposed to it. But I do think Austin Energy is effectively opposed to it. They offer these kinds of programs right now, but you do have to pay that $11,000 to get your solar panels and try and get that money back, and generally it's not affordable. But if you do open it up to other private sectors, like Solar City, where you don't purchase an $11,000 solar panel, you lease it over many, many years over the course of the life of the house. Then it becomes actually affordable for anyone to go ahead and get this and start putting money back into the grid, putting energy back in the grid, and saving yourself tons of money. So the opportunities are already out there to do this. Right now, the people that are in the way of it is Austin Energy, and I believe City Council, the current City Council, is culpable towards that.
I strongly support customer adoption of solar energy in homes and businesses, and I think that we need a multi-tiered approach. And I think when it comes to new construction, that is where we can get a lot of bang for the buck, because it's coming up with new materials, and we can strongly encourage, and in some cases demand, solar energy for new construction. And then we have that next level of people who want to do this, but can't necessarily afford it. And what they need is a little incentives, whether that's subsidies or rebates. But I also think that there's another tier of, and this is usually lower income folks, and this is in many cases a lot of people from my neighborhood in East Austin who are suspicious of the city offering programs and rebates. And I think that there needs to be a neighborhood approach to this insofar as, first, doing needed repairs on a lot of these older homes to make them more energy efficient so they can support this newer technology, and then also educating them on the possible rebates, subsidizing those rebates, and working to make sure that neighborhood folks are more comfortable with this type of technology.
I'm probably the only guy who's actually a scientist. I graduated as a physicist from UT Austin and then got my master's in Imperial College in London. And then I studied philosophy later on. That's why I like to write books. I think that we should really think big, all right? I mean, if solar energy is the way to go, well, why don't you go to the source, okay? Why do you go here, do the chemistry, you do the physics, you do the fission over there. In other words, harness the sun, the process that is inherent in the sun, okay? Fusing elements of hydrogen, into helium and getting the energy. That's the way to go. I believe science, and I teach science at Gardner Best, and I tell my kids, science is the way to go, guys. Have faith in science. Science has a great transformative capacity for transforming everything. We are human, we are creative. All we have to do is start using our whole brain, and I think I have no problem. I think fission is the way to go. As far as this, I see no problem, with adopting solar energy. Why not, but it won't solve the problem. So, that's okay.
I have to look at you because I'm blind on this one eye, and I have to do that kind of take. It would be insane for me to say no to solar energy. Now, our biggest problem is who's going to control your solar energy. Before you even get started, you're going to have code compliance come on you and tell you can't use that kind of nail, you cannot use that kind of screw, that kind of cell, it's already outdated, and it's just going to be almost impossible. I love the idea, I want to do it. If I could afford it, I'd be doing it. But I just don't trust City of Austin, Austin Energy, and code compliance to come through with allowing us to have the solar energy without their involvement. Too much government in our personal business is not a good thing for us.
A significant portion of your electric bill is the transfers. It is a stealth tax, and this goes into a general fund. It does not go to programs specific for energy generation or renewable energy. It goes into the general fund, and that needs to be reformed. I agree that, especially with such a low amount of homeowners in District 3 and such a high level of renters and, multi-family, multi-use structures, I definitely think that, not only new construction, but also the way in which we do zoning. I think that future construction in District 3 is going to be booming in population over the next 10 years for the future. And I think that, put it this way, when I ran for city council in 2012, one of the ideas that I had, because they were talking about the affordable housing bond that was on that election, that say in 2012 election, and I would like to have seen that any new affordable housing that the city puts in have a southerly orientation to take advantage of solar, because not every you may have an apartment building, but it may not be appropriate for solar due to which way its roof is oriented.
I come from the perspective that the government that does the least is usually the best, but in the instance of new homes being built, that's something we ought to demand out of the builders. We ought to have an ordinance in place before this next council is done doing anything else that requires any new home built in Austin to at least be capable of on-site solar generation. And if the builders say, because they will, well, that's not affordable, that's going to make it more unaffordable to buy a house, well then give them the choice. You can either make that house solar capable or put some money into the affordable housing fund. And with all due respect, anyone that says that solar power is not affordable, you have to look, just like when you buy a car, you look at the whole cost of ownership. I mean, the Decker plant's the #1 reason why we have ozone action days. The mercury coming from coal-fired plants causes billions of dollars in health problems. So maybe there's a cost here, but there's a greater cost for not adopting safer clean.
I think the city should do everything in its power to promote the use of renewables, and I think this is a great idea for more homes, more businesses. If we could add it to bills at reasonable finance rates, and anything to make the process easier and efficient, and anything the city can do to promote renewables and move us away from this culture of depending on these dangerous sources, I would absolutely support. And as people who are looking to be the leadership of Austin, we can't be blaming what Austin Energy is doing. We need to be ready to, on day one, go up there and promote this message of renewables. And if that message, if the city council is promoting that message, Austin Energy is going to have to follow suit.
Bring a chair up for our moderator over here.
She's getting her work on today. The moderator and the.
Okay, so this is a 1-minute question. How should the water use requirements for energy extraction, such as fracking and energy production, affect the selection of Austin energy sources?
I think it should be one of the primary concerns when we're thinking of energy resources. I mentioned that there was a chart given at one of the candidate information sessions that was the cycle of when you have an energy source that's creating emissions, that requires, you're exacerbating climate change, which leads to less rain basically, which then, the arrow went down and said, but we need more water to keep producing this thing that's creating this cycle of less water basically. And we're already in a water crisis. So fracking is the big one that requires billions of gallons of water. And I know the other non-renewables, other coal emissions, I think there also requires billions of gallons of water. And so when we're thinking of using resources that are just exacerbating our water crisis, that is an extreme primary concern we should be thinking about, among other ones, but that's a very important one.
We should think about our usage of water in everything we do. There was a meme I saw last week of a little boy from another continent looking at America saying, "You use clean water in your toilet?" And that's how we waste it in this country, and we waste it on energy sources that we don't need. The cost of solar has dropped astronomically in the last 10 years, whereas the price of natural gas remains extremely volatile. We waste a lot of money by locking in a price on gas only to see it drop low. And then we don't lock in that price, and then the price goes up. The net result is we pay higher on our fuel surcharge. So the affordable part isn't an argument anymore, not to mention the health cost, but the reliability of delivering a set price is what makes solar the more desirable choice. I don't think that it's a discussion that we in Austin need to be having of what way we can pollute the environment. We need to have the discussion of how can we clean up the environment.
It's my turn. The Hawaiian word for water is wai, W-A-I. When I worked in Waimanalo on the leeward coast, actually the windward coast of the island of Oahu, as a federal resource manager for the Department of Defense, I grew to understand what water really means to Native people, to Native Hawaiians in this case. Water, other than air, is the most fundamental resource that we have, and it should not ever be wasted. Now, the question asks, what about fracking? Is fracking wasteful use of water? Well, I suppose that depends on your perspective. In my judgment, we can do better than frack for gas. I understand the energy politics in a state like Texas. I have friends who work as frackers in the Eagle Ford Shale in South Texas because I was Texified in Corpus Christi. But my position is fracking and water. And first of all, we need to know what's in the water.
Well, in the early 1990s, we wrote a book called Sacred Waters, Lifeblood of Mother Earth. And in there, we were already looking at how cities were not looking at the use of water, and people were looking at water as a commodity, something to be sold, and not as something that was very sacred. And when we looked at how the city had brought in all the high-tech industries into Austin without looking at the water plant, because high-tech industry takes millions and millions of gallons of water to produce those things. And we actually had to spend a whole pipeline just to go to Samsung, a larger pipeline, in order to provide more water to them. And then we look at the whole issue of fracking. It goes beyond just using water. You talk about chemicals that you have to use in fracking, and how fracking itself is causing seismic changes. It's also contaminating our watersheds. And so it's very important that we look at water as sacred and not as a commodity.
We've taken water for granted for so long. Up until recently, when we didn't have any, or it's getting short, we started worrying. Fracking's been going on for a long time too, but I would question if it's safe and whether we should use water for that. But we've talked about closing down current power plants, and as we increase our solar and wind and our renewables, and we can get away from coal and gas, then we can reduce involvement with fracking and using a lot of water for energy production. I think everybody up here is going to have about the same answer.
All right. I too have some friends that are in the fracking business, I guess, or do fracking, and sort of the horror stories that they tell me about the wastefulness of the water and the contamination of the water afterwards is definitely something that concerns me highly. And it's one thing that kind of I think should lead us more into the way when it comes to solar, when it comes to wind, and for us to push in that direction. I think, like I said, it's wasteful, it's harmful, and it's something that we should not continue to support. So when it comes to this such as fracking, I think we need to stop it. We need to make sure that you don't support it, and we need to do that by investing more into solar and wind.
I think this all comes down to just one big cost analysis. What we need to see here is, take that priority, which right now for my district is affordability, and let's find out how much is water. I would presume water is going to be the most expensive thing right now in terms of its availability and its value. So I don't think we should be wasting it, and it's certainly not to be creating energy that's going to go somewhere else, that's going to be sold off to someone else, and we don't see any benefit from that. If it's our land, that should remain here, and let's just check the cost analysis, make sure that we need to be valuing the water the way that we are, and use it appropriately. Furthermore, what we might need to look into is, what are people upstream of us doing? Are there people fracking upriver of us and destroying some of the water that should be coming down to us? And if that is the case, we need to start pulling in the LCRA and the state of Texas to make sure that they are protecting our source of water as it comes downstream to us, and make sure it's not just being used up by whoever in between.
So this question is from the perspective of selection of Austin Energy's resources. Texas has enormous potential for both solar and wind power, both of which, relatively speaking, have lower water requirements. We also have drought. So this is a very common sense approach, right? We have potential resources that don't use a lot of water, and we have drought, and we have other resources that use a lot of water. And as Austin Energy, as a consumer and selection of those resources and where that energy comes from, we just need to not select ones that are heavily water dependent. And we can make that choice. And especially in Texas, where solar and wind can be incredibly powerful with enormous potential.
All right, okay. Fracking, I think, is a very bad idea, and I cannot understand why. I mean, fracking is a private sector, and the private sector is after profit, obviously. Government or Austin Energy is government, but government is not the people. Okay, let's get that straight. The government is just the political class, the dominant political class, and we saw it in Austin, you know, with a 6-1 for I don't know how long, how many years. It's just a power class, that's all it is. And they have their own interests, and they win elections, but they're not really the people. They don't really care, okay, for people, because they're not the people, and people that are on the fracking business, on the private sector, well, they're in for money, okay? So one guys are for money and the others are for power. So we need to create a sector that is actually for the people, that is not dependent on that. I would, if I was elected for the city council, I would actually weaken the city council as far as the Austin Energy by taking away this cash cow from the city council and creating this universal sector.
Okay, I'm not gonna use this.
Leave it on.
Yes, it's on.
She's recording.
She's recording.
Oh, it's recording.
I'm sorry.
It was coming out of
Well, first of all, I do agree with everyone so far. Fracking is bad for us. Susanna is one of the big proponents as to Mother Earth, and she believes in Mother Earth, and so do I. You know, that's very important. We, as human beings, we all know the science behind it. We all are made out of water, you know, and can we live off of fracked water? You know, we can't. There's no way. Kent mentioned something about most expensive. The water, that's the most expensive thing right now, it's water. You break it down, you go to the store, you buy a pint of water, that's $1. Get 16 pints into a gallon, $16 a gallon by the time you use it. So $16 a gallon compared to $3.39 for gasoline, okay, which is higher? That's, you know, that's so, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make common sense to use fracking. You know, and we shouldn't use it at all.
Well, if you're wondering why I mentioned water infrastructure in my opening statement, this is why. Water is Austin's most precious resource, and we lose 7% of it just to leaks in the ground because we have pre-World War II cast iron pipe servicing major portions of Austin, and it's more significant in District 3. When it comes to fracking, yes, fracking is, well, let's look at it this way. Fracking is a technology problem. If Elon Musk is listening to this, could you spend all of your money inventing some sort of a thing that could get natural gas out without fracking fluids? Thank you, Elon. But I would also like to say that, you know, like I believe one of my opponents said earlier, we should know what is in the fracking fluid, but another opponent then said, talked about the water that we use for different sectors in Austin, such as the semiconductor industry uses a tremendous amount of water for we keep wanting to attract technology jobs. We also have to understand those technology jobs are huge water consumers. So it's not just the rice paddy farms, it's also the type of technology, the industry that we're trying to bring to Austin that we should also take a look at.
I'll talk just briefly about water. So on a national average, we're using about 160 gallons per day per person. It's a lot of water. If we talk about how we're going to be using water, you know, in the future, it's almost true that wind and solar are almost water-free. However, some of the natural gas plants are also water-free. So we have to say, is this a really good argument? When we look at everything, we have to look at the really big picture, because in the future, it's going to be not how we live, where we live, but if we are going to live. And those are some things that we need to really be considering right now. I know everybody to my left and to my right has really mentioned and focused on this ground about these things and these details. And we really need to be paying attention to them. Thank you.
I would answer the question.
Yeah, okay. You let me make extra comments?
No, it's okay. You're sharing.
Oh,
All right, so this is going to be a 1-minute question. What, if any, changes would you support to make electric bills more affordable for low-income customers And what will you do to help them conserve energy?
This is a great question, because what many other candidates tonight have brought up, that the affordability issue in Austin is not just the price of rent, it's the price of your utility bill. And those stealth taxes on your water bill and your electric bill, that stuff adds up. And for starters, there does need to be a little bit of belt tightening and house cleaning at Austin Energy. It shouldn't be a revolving door that you get off the city council and go to Austin Energy and make a six-figure job. If you look at our primary movers downtown, it's not just politics, it's power. And the power of electricity and the power of money. I mean, it's no accident that we have former council members that are now running solar power companies, and other council members that are working for developers, and that's the number one thing. But a real live, direct answer of what we can do is, just like we have community gardens, we could have community solar farms.
I have no great claim to be an energy expert. I'm very appreciative of the work that these organizations have done to educate us. I'm also very lucky to have as my campaign treasurer Jackie Goodwin, who's been an amazing mentor to me, and she's also introduced me to another amazing mentor, Shuey Fath, who has mentored me as well and is endorsing my campaign. And one thing she advocates for, which I strongly support, is the way that Austin Energy currently sets rates disproportionately allocates the fixed cost of the electricity to residential ratepayers. And so I think the city council needs to direct the city manager, to direct Austin Energy to come up with there's other methods that are more fair to residential ratepayers, and the Austin Energy needs to look at those options again and come up with better options that create lower costs that doesn't affect the residential ratepayers as much as the current system does.
Well, I think one of the things that need to be done is that we need to cap the salary of the administrators in Austin Energy. They're making way too much money. That needs to happen so that we could have more funds for other programs. We need to redirect a lot of the Austin Energy funds to assist again with solar, but to also assist the low-income, working class and middle-class people, because we can't afford $11,000 to get solar panels in our homes. But I think the other thing we do need to look at the whole rate structure of how that is done, and to make sure that there is an equitable setting. But it's more than just the electric bill. When we look at the drainage fees, when we look at the cleanup fees, when we look at all the fees that are being added to people every day, that whole structure needs to be looked at, because there's not an equitable way that drainage fees and other monies that are picked up are being spread equitable across the city. When you look at the drainage fees and where it's been used, it's not been in East Austin. So we really need to look at how that money is being used.
I think a lot of the problems with our electric bills is what I would call truth in taxation. Austin Energy is a tax, okay? It pays for a lot of the general fund of our city. And when our current council has said, oh, we're not raising your rates, we're not raising your tax rates, we're not raising your tax rates. Well, no, we're gonna slide it into Austin Energy. We're gonna pull a little more out of Austin Energy. And, while not separating Austin Energy or privatizing it, we need to reduce that amount. I support, I'm sorry, people are gonna hate me for it, I would support taking $36 million in that 20% homestead tax exemption and let's take $36 million less out of Austin Energy and pass it on to everybody, renters and homeowners. As far as energy conservation programs, they're not accessible and affordable to people in District 3. I actually did my own insulation installation because it was cheaper for me to do it than to hire the company that Austin Energy said I had to use to do it, and that just doesn't make any sense.
No, now you got nothing.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with everybody here. I think, I think the first thing we need to do, like Sean was saying earlier, is to audit Austin Energy. I think that will help out dramatically anybody's bill. And I agree with Delia and Susanna. I think first, looking at the rates, the way they're structured, and then obviously drainage fees. These are not complex, problems. They're very easy problems that we can find solutions for. And I think that's sort of the struggle that most people have and the frustration they have with Austin Energy. It's like, these are things that we can all agree on. We can all realize that, hey, this is a solution to the problems, and so why are we doing this? And that's where I think when New 10-1 comes in, it's going to be a lot of change, a lot of good change for a lot of people. So I think those three things in general will definitely clear up a lot for the taxpayers.
I just want to start off by clarifying, when I do say privatization, I don't mean I'm going to walk in day one and shut down Austin Energy and say, good luck with the companies. I think what we need to do is start making sure Austin Energy isn't stopping other companies from coming in here and competing on a fair level with Austin Energy to provide better service or better prices for the citizens in the city. And I do think, barring that kind of activity, and maybe even with that, I'm also with Sean in terms of auditing the Austin Energy and making sure that they are doing what they can do to, or handling their money appropriately, I should say. And I would go on further to say that in order to get these bills affordable, we need to also pull the idea out of Austin Energy that it is there to make money for the city. No, it's there to provide that service. If it's going to be there, it should only be doing that. We should be making money out of our own tax system, which currently is property taxes, which can be brought down to the effective tax rate.
So long-term affordability for low-income households is really about efficiency and making the places we live more efficient. And so the question is how we get there. One of those ways we get there is weatherization. And I think that you have to look at it both from the rental properties and individual homeowners. Certainly for an individual homeowner, there's that $11,000 cost to get solar. But before you even can get there, you have to do home repairs, insulation repairs. So I think that we first focus on getting those low-income folks subsidies or rebates for those repairs, and then work towards improved weatherization. And similarly, with the low-income rental units, I think we work with the truly affordable apartment complexes to get those same kind of structures and fixtures in there that improve efficiency, because that creates long-term affordability. And certainly with new construction, if you look at some of the new houses that are coming through with the land banking, those houses are very energy efficient and very affordable. And I think that's another route we need to pursue.
I'm an educator, as I was telling you, and Aristotle used to say that we are animals of habit, and habits are acquired socially. And socially, you can acquire it two ways, either by what your friend tells you to do or not to do, or you can go to school, okay, and learn it scientifically, learn it the right way. We can address the causes, we can address the effects, or we can address the causes. If we go for the effects, well, lower the rates, obviously, But if we have a bad habit and you lower the rates, all you're gonna do is just pay less and consume more, and then you're gonna have more carbon footprint and so on. You have to address the causes, and the causes are in education. People need to go to school to learn how to save money, how to run a house, that's what economics is all about, how to run a house, how to respect the planet. The city is a live, collective person, and so is the planet. And the planet is suffering, the city is suffering, and we have to look at it holistically.
All righty, first of all, I think this question is misleading for the simple reason it's, the billing system doesn't recognize who is low income. They build on usage. They don't care, who it is or what their status is. They don't care if you're rich, or because the rich can afford to to conserve. You know, the poor can't. So the bill system does not help us at all. And how can we reduce this? Well, we have to help each other. And first of all, I believe Susanna mentioned just a minute ago, you know, with the high prices that we're paying for the directors. I don't know if you guys know this, but the lead director at Austin Energy is making over $300,000. Take it home. Okay, we have 16 people that work under him that make over $125,000. Let's talk about low-income customers. Is that going to help us? You know, they don't care about that. And the billing cycle should reflect the customers that they're servicing.
To illustrate exactly how much the director of Austin Energy makes, imagine that this is the new 10-1 council. So it's from Mr. Phillips to Mr. Valera here. These are your 10 council candidates. He makes half of the dais. That is how much he makes a year, and that's outrageous. You know, we are managing the city. He manages a utility. I think that the things we pay for Susanna is absolutely right. We are way overpaying for services. If auditing Austin Energy is important to you in this election, then I am your candidate. I would like to go ahead and further and say one thing that I think that people would like more, not like more, but would also are expecting is what to expect with the electric bill. That's why with the Green Choice Patron option, they have 3-year contracts. That gives predictability to not only prices, but also hiring and your bottom line. I think that Austin Energy needs to stop mailing color inserts into every electric bill you get. I think that is a tremendous waste of money. And yeah, but it all comes down to auditing Austin Energy. Absolutely nothing you want will ever come unless Austin Energy is independently audited.
So I want to reread this question back again. It says, what, if any, changes would you support to make electric bills more affordable for low-income customers? And what will you do to help them conserve energy? Well, as a council member, and it was mentioned here shortly, that there's a lot of what's and how's, but we have to do the how part. This is how we're going to do it. For the rentals and for the homeowners. Especially for the rentals, we need to mandate the minimal energy standards. For example, weatherization, doors, windows, insulation, and ceiling ducts. Because what is taking place is there's so many cracks in a lot of these big apartments. And then these individuals that are paying on their base rate for the apartment complex are paying astronomical amounts of money for their energy, for the AC unit. And so it's an ongoing process. It's been going on for so long. Now it's time to change it. We have to mandate that. We have to make them do that. Take care of it.
Well, you've heard me reference my PhD earlier, but now let me speak to you as a salt of the earth builder, a green builder, somebody who actually, as I mentioned in my opening statement, has professional credentials as an energy auditor, as a weatherization expert, et cetera, et cetera. Several things we can do. One of the things we can do is we can move towards the German passive house standard. That's one of the most stringent green building standards in existence, and it produces measurable reductions in utility bills up to 90% over code-built structures. This can be applied to all new construction, and it can apply to existing homes. That's number one. Number two, we need to educate our people about what your utility bill actually says. Most people have no clue what those fees are and what is in the, I mean, it's just bamboozling nonsense. People, if they find out what's in it, will start asking questions, and that's what we want. And then I return back to the feed-in tariff. The feed-in tariff is crucial. We need to develop capital, and what we need to do is unleash our entrepreneurial spirit in Austin, and the feed-in tariff can do that. That's what it's done in Germany.
This is going to be a 30-second question. Okay. So 55% of Austinites are renters. requiring owners of apartments and other rental properties.
That's not the question.
We got the utility subsidy question.
Just read that.
But I'll answer that one too.
What is your position on the continued use of utility subsidies to industrial and large commercial customers?
I'm against subsidies for large commercial customers and industrial. I mean, I think we need to look to put a focus on the residents that are here. We need to take care of our low income and our middle income people. We need to take care of small business. I have a friend that's got a restaurant opened 4 years ago, $1,300 a month bill. It uses the same amount of energy now, it's $2,300. $1,000 increase in just 4 years. So small businesses who provide jobs to real people and at real income levels that we need can't afford to pay their utility.
Oh, 30 seconds, all right. I actually am for tax subsidies as long as they're warranted. I think when we do tax subsidies, we have to make sure that we do an economic analysis by naming the party first. And part of that economic analysis also must include an environmental analysis to make sure that if they are having subsidies environmentally, that they are one of the leaders when it comes to green energy as well, and that the subsidies they have actually go back to the customers and to the citizens of Austin. So I have no problem with it, but as long as we get a lot back in return and it's part of the analysis that's taking place.
I'm running to represent District 3, and as far as I'm concerned, District 3 is more focused on affordability. Subsidies will just increase the taxes, release the spending of the city, and so I'm not for that. I don't know why we, as members of District 3, would need to do that, at least until the point where we are in some sort of job crisis. But right now, we've said it before, we're in an affordability crisis, not job crisis, so let's focus on that for now, at least up until the point where we might need to help some small businesses and encourage economic growth.
No, this way.
No, the other way.
I think we generally over-subsidize for large companies and some industrial entities, but I think that every case has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. The reality is that some of these large commercial customers and industrial customers create a lot of jobs, and I think there are a lot of folks in District 3 that work at these jobs. And so we really need to balance the subsidy against the impact on those customers and whether they're really just going to leave if they don't get those subsidies or if they get less of those subsidies.
Well, there's a law, that the greater the amount, the volume that you consume, the price drops. So I don't know if it's a subsidy that the industrial and large commercial customers are receiving, or just a price for volume, like wholesale and retail. They're very different prices. And if it's just wholesale prices, I would think that it's wholesale prices more so than subsidies that we're talking about here. That's how I understand it. And if that is the case, well, that's the law of the market. The more you buy, in volume, well, the cheaper should be the
Okay, the one thing that no one has focused on with the industrial and large commercial usage is Austin Energy has a very stiff penalty for overuse of utilities by these people. Okay, yeah, we give them subsidies and we bring them in, but at the same time, that's where a lot of our money in Austin Energy comes from, is from penalties that they put into these companies. And nobody here has focused on what they're going through also. Do we want to run these people out? Well, we can't. We depend on them to bring dollars to Austin, Texas. And we also have, I'm at zero?
30 seconds. The next one is 15 then.
You need to stand right here where I can see you, man. I'm blind on this.
I absolutely agree that any subsidies, I think with the new responsible, more representative 10-1 council is gonna be instantly a different take on subsidies. I would definitely see, a case-by-case basis is absolutely necessary. Like I said earlier, you may want to bring in, incentivize like, oh, this semiconductor factory will bring in lots of jobs, but they're going to be a huge water consumer. I think those also need to be taken into consideration, but I think that we need to go to our small businesses and ask them, what is it that we can do to make your, not to subsidize them, to there's just no time for 30 seconds.
He had it wrong.
Personally, I would support the phase out of subsidies for large customers in 2015 as scheduled. It is highly unlikely that these large customers will argue the continued rate discounts.
What a great answer that is.
Excellent, Mario.
That's a great answer. Anybody, by the way, who is interested in looking at a state-of-the-art facility that gets these kinds of incentives, look at Apple's campus here, as well as their headquarters in Cupertino that they're building. Truly amazing, some of the things they're doing there. There's a way we can phase this out and do it well, and that's with a feed-in tariff. I come back to this again, okay? What if we incentivized these large employers, these big companies, to become energy independent themselves, on site, using distributed solar, fuel cells, and other sorts of things, okay? That is a win-win. It generates capital for them, which we can use for affordability. Well, you get the picture.
Well, I think that one of the things we have to look at in subsidies is that these large and industrial commercials are for profits. That's a big difference. We as residents use it as necessity. When we use utilities, it's not to, we're not making money off of energy or water. So I think that we should not be giving subsidies to the large industrial and commercial. Thank you.
One of the largest receivers of these subsidies is the state of Texas. Austin Energy cuts them a break like you would think that they're helping us out, and they're not. So that's one thing that really needs to be looked at, is how much of a break we give them, or else let them go find electricity somewhere else and let them start paying taxes on some of the valuable property, commercial property that they're not paying property taxes on. We over-subsidize commercial tax appraisals, and we over-subsidize their utility rates, and that's part of why 10-1 is overdue.
I definitely agree we need to phase out these subsidies, and, I mean, we could concentrate more on subsidizing small business. They employ the majority of Austinites, and also do whatever we can to incentivize homeowners to use more renewables. So I think we do need to stop subsidizing large companies that are making profit, or, as Susanna said, your residential ratepayers aren't making profit. They're just trying to pay the bills and get by.
Is it gonna be lightning round? Yes or no? Yes or no?
15 seconds.
Yes, exactly. Then this could be a variable one. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe 35 seconds.
You're gonna have 5, I'm just kidding.
Yes or no?
You'll have 30 seconds for this question. Again, it's gonna be 30 seconds. 55% of Austinites are renters. What is your position on requiring owners of apartments and other rental properties to meet minimum energy efficiency standards?
I think we need to do all we can to get our apartments meeting energy efficient standards. My only concern is, again, affordability. When you talk to developers and landlords, they say we're just gonna pass that cost on to the homeowner or to the renter. So if the city can maybe do a pilot program and see how that works, to see when requiring these apartment owners to bring those buildings up to standard, I think it's a step in the right direction.
First off, we need to get rid of once and for all the dinosaurs of all bills paid. There's actually still places that are all bills paid, and they need to be gone. But it makes perfect sense to incentivize this for property owners, because for their bottom line, it makes your property a lot more rentable if you have it a 5-star green rating. It makes sense for everyone, and I think we have enough of a free spirit in this town that if we incentivize it and make it make sense rather than beat people over the head with it, who would refuse it?
Well, I'm for making sure that apartment rentals have minimum efficiency standards. I think it's going to be beneficial. But again, it comes down to cost, and I think that's where the problem lies. That's going to be a challenge as well, to try to make sure that that the standard is met. But I do think incentives is the way to go, at least especially with a lot of apartment buildings. I think it's going to be, because like Delia was saying, a lot of those fees get pushed on to the renters, and I think we need to ensure that that doesn't happen. So I do like the standard, but I do look for more incentives to those programs. Thank you.
I think I'm just going to agree with what's been said so far. The cost is going to be brought down to the people. I think I've made my stance clear on this. I'm in favor of making housing more affordable, not more expensive for those in District 3. Anything you can do that might help efficiency and in the long run get their money back, that sounds all good to me. Otherwise, I think this is an idea for other districts that aren't as focused on affordability as we are.
What does retirement look like? Get the Army rhythm.
That's our next thing.
I support at least a minimum baseline requirement for efficiency standards, and I think that a lot of the apartment complexes will get on board with that. And I also think that requiring that will, in the long term, improve efficiency and lower the cost for the people that actually rent those units. I think there's certainly going to be some of the lower income rental units that requiring that and mandating that will put excessive pressure, and on those specific units, we need to look at assisting them to meet that standard.
Yeah, well, it's hard to disagree on this, but the question isn't so much that. We need to look at the causes. Who is going to regulate it? Should the market regulate it? Because the price, that's what it is. The price of the commodity is a social regulator by itself. Either that or you enforce it by government. And if you do it by government, you're going to have more requirements, bigger bureaucracy, more taxes because you guys have to be paid. And I would be of the idea that let the market itself, the price of the commodity, regulate. And people, they're not dumb. They say, hey, if I can invest, and pay less bills, I will invest. Let the market handle that.
Okay, I agree with what he said all the way. I have something to add on something else. The only one that makes more money than the director, it's code compliance, which would fall into this. Over $330,000 a year, the director of code compliance. And we're gonna ask him to go and make sure these guys are efficiently using the energy. I don't know, but I do agree with you.
I think the one thing, like I mentioned earlier, I think that when we look at new apartment buildings and owners and whatnot, is that we need to have a zoning change or to make sure that the new constructions have a southerly facing broad part of their roof. Because a lot of apartment buildings get sold. So I would like to see that, if the original owner did not want to put a solar system up, that the next owner has a roof access for solar possibilities. But I would also like to say that we should possibly look into making standardized R ratings, which is an efficiency measurement, for any future constructions.
I believe I answered this question just a while ago. We need to mandate, make them do it to where renters have a very efficient environment where they're not spending high cost of money to have energy use. So again, you have to mandate it. Thank you.
So again, I'm the energy auditor up here on this panel. I do this for a living. I implement our existing energy efficiency regulations now. Most of my business has to do with ECAD compliance. We have an ECAD ordinance, okay, that one that you know about, where if you sell your house and it's older than a certain number of years, you have to have an energy audit done. I'm the guy who does that, okay? You call my company, I'll come out and do an energy audit of your house and let you know empirically how bad or good your house is, okay? Now, that gives me a perspective on this issue. And the perspective is, well, oh my God, okay.
Yeah, I think that we need to work at this requiring the minimum efficiency standards, but I think that we can start by requiring it on all the new affordable apartments that are going to come on scale with the new affordable millions of dollars that we just passed. But I think we also need to look at incentives and subsidies to these apartments to bring them up to par, because it's going to benefit the renters the most. And so I think that this is where we could use some of those subsidies and incentives when it comes to helping those apartments, which is going to help everyone in the city.
Over the last year, we've probably seen 20,000 apartments, new apartments being built, most of them energy efficient. The problem is older apartments. And the ball was really dropped in East Riverside, a District 3 area, by our current council, commissioners, board members, everybody, because they've allowed companies like unnamed, like Roscoe, to come in and buy affordable apartments, slap a coat of paint on and double the rent. At that point is when they should have required them to upgrade energy efficiency, and now we've lost that opportunity.
Roscoe did that to me.
They did it.
They literally did, just put up paint.
They did it to thousands of people. Sorry if anybody else stopped in Roscoe.
They all do.
This is also going to be a 30-second question. What is your position on the continued existence of the Green Choice Program? And what, if any, changes do you think need to be made to it?
I think again, we're dealing with an old city council that we did not trust to make our decisions for us, to represent us properly. Just about anything that they have done, I'm going to view with a very weary eye and like to go into it very deeply with a fine-tooth comb before I give my stamp of approval on it. Outside of that, yeah, I'm more or less just going to be against it.
I'm actually unfamiliar with the specifics of this program, and so I'm just going to have to promise you to look into it, do my analysis of it, and if you want to come back to me, feel free to email me and I'll get you a better answer on this.
Last second. 30, okay. I think there's an ideology behind all this, guys, that the green ideology, that's what it is. It's just evading the issue. And this is just playing with us, you know, this green choice, all these beautiful things about green this and green that, you know, our children's, all that. That's just an ideology. They're selling us something that has no substance at all. We need to really address the real issues underlying our society, that we live in a world in crisis, and we have to address it. The way we think is a problem. When we think in the either-or modality, when we should be thinking in the both-and modality.
I agree with you. He's absolutely correct on this. You know, it's all about, you know, the definition and what it means, you know. You hit it right on the nail. Thank you.
Like I said earlier, I think the Green Choice Patron Program is a really ideal to go forward, especially with their 3-year contracts. We can talk about affordability, but predictability is also very important to people. I think that if we were to, I'm the candidate of choices. More choices, the better. To have block people into like, column A or column B, I think is we should shy away from that. But we definitely need to look into providing options for ratepayers because some people, with LED light bulbs, people are they're conserving, but just give them more choices on how to pay for it.
I would consider lowering the cost of Green Choice as new and lower cost wind contracts come in online. Thank you.
This program was more about what was good for the utility than what was good for the planet, decarbonizing our operations in a measurable way. Okay? I would terminate it and replace it with a feed-in tariff. Now, it would have an impact on our climate protection targets, but the energies that would be unleashed by the adoption of a feed-in tariff would more than robustly make up for the termination of this program.
I too believe that we need to reevaluate the Green Choice Program and to make sure that is it really efficient and are there other programs that we need to institute?
I think the key to the Green Choice Program is the word choice. When the program was started out, it was people who could afford could choose to buy their energy from a renewable source such as wind and solar. Now, as wind and solar are getting more and more efficient and affordable, I don't know how much the program makes sense, but if people want to make that choice and they can afford to make that choice, it should be up to them. I just don't want to see this Green Choice Program thrown off into everybody, and then you have affordable houses that can't afford to buy their energy from solar or wind yet.
Like we said it before, I think it was initially a good idea, but I think for most people think it's run its course. I like the idea. I just think we need to reevaluate, as Suzanne said, and from there, go look at it at a different perspective. So, as much as I like it, I think it's good for us to reevaluate it, and kind of bring it up to date and up to code.
Trying to imagine who would be against having a choice. But the Green Choice Program is one that came on board with a lot of fanfare. A lot of people said it was a lot of backslapping and a feel-good option. But if you're willing to make that choice and pay that extra fee, who could be against that? Get back the balance of my time, because I would think that this is an idea that makes sense on its own.
I get 45 seconds. I think the Green Choice Program is a good program. Basically, people choose to pay more to get renewable energy, solar and wind, and I think its purpose was to get people to start that culture away from bad sources and to new sources. It's just, it's like a decision you make when you buy your car. Am I going to pay more for a Prius? You can afford to buy a Prius, great. You can't afford to buy a Prius, you buy something more affordable. But it is a choice, and I think it's great that people have decided to take part in it and depend more on renewable sources.
And this is our last question.
5-second answer. Good God. Big fan of that. 5 minutes. Yeah, right. Swipe left and right.
Let's not forget our closing statements also afterwards. Okay, so it's going to be a 30-second question. Austin Energy owns a 16% share of the 2 South Texas nuclear reactors, which are set to retire in 2027 and 2028, but may be relicensed. Do you favor keeping, adding to, or phasing out nuclear power as an energy source for Austin Energy?
I favor phasing them out when at this goal. I don't favor relicensing them. They're dangerous, they cost a lot to keep, to maintain, and we need to move more towards dependence on renewables and research and development to be able to store those renewables. So I think it's a great goal to get these offline.
I think I've been pretty clear how I feel about nuclear energy. I'll support it when we can get 1.21 gigawatts off of the Mr. Fusion on the back of a DeLorean. Until we reach that future point, we're endangering our bays and ecosystem with this project specifically. It was one of the first things that made me politically stand up and take notice as a young person here in Austin. I thought people were against STP. I was like, why are they against motor outlet? Oh, it's TMP. I had good science teachers that told me this is a decision we're making for the rest of our lives, and we need to stop it sooner rather than later.
The audience is clearly getting restless, so I'll keep it short. I'm in favor of phasing out the nuclear power plants.
Well, yes, it's phasing it out, but on the long run, we need to face what are we going to be replacing it with, you know, because fossils don't do, you know, the German idea of the solar panels, you know, we need to go to the fission, we need to go to the source, but we need to think in the big picture and the long duration. We're used to getting returns like next year or in 3 years' time, and that just doesn't work. With fission, we have to do the research, we have to fund doing basic research, and that's the way to go.
Thank you. I'm in favor of phasing it out, but at this point, we can't really, we don't have anything else to rely on. If they relicense, I'm all for the relicense, because that way we have a backup plan. You know, if solar and wind and the renewable energy comes into play, sure, we'll use it, we'll turn it over. But as of right now, you know, we cannot cut away from depending on this system.
Yeah, like I'm in agreement. I think that, you know, if you can shut down these plants are shut down, if Fayette's shut down, we have absolutely nothing to replace that load with. Even these is 2027, 2028, that's been 2 years, but 2 or 3 years before 2030. Even if we were able to meet these renewable goals, I think that that's why I like the green. I like a lot of things about the green choice is that if you don't want your power from nuclear, you can choose to be on a program that gets it from non-nuclear. If you're, you know, a Koch brother and you want your power generated by orphans on stationary bicycles, you know that.
Flux capacitor.
Oh yeah, he made a flux capacitor joke earlier privately, so it's a running thing here tonight. Just let the Libyans get you before you do it.
I personally favor retiring the plant at the end of the original licensing period or before, but however, there will be tremendous economic pressure to keep Austin involved in the project because the capital debt will be paid for, and the only cost will be fuel and the operations and maintenance. Thank you.
When it comes to nuclear power, I'm not a novice. I have served on multiple ships and submarines that were nuclear powered as a naval officer, and both that and as an enlisted man. I know nuclear power pretty well. I'm aware of contemporary nuclear power advocates and the arguments they make about reactor safety and waste storage. I don't agree with them, however. I support phasing this out. Nuclear power is 20th century technology. We need to be adopting 21st century technology in here.
Thank you, Fred. I think the council made a big mistake such a long time ago, and they should have listened to the constituents back then when they decided to go into nuclear. We've done nothing but lose money on this whole plant, and I believe too that we should phase out and that we should be ready to go into the renewable energies, into solar and wind and other alternatives. This is just going to be, this is a disaster waiting to happen. It's happened before, and it's nothing good for the planet, and it's nothing good for us either.
I think that was one tough grandma that pushed that, right?
Yeah.
My vision is being the first district councilman from District 3 that in 2015, I get to implement a solar in place plan. And in these 13 or 14 years from now, everybody in Austin that wants solar on the roof, whether they're low income or not, has a solar panel on the roof helping with their energy bills so that we no longer need power from the nuclear reactors. With a 16% share, I don't know if we have any control over the relicensing. And the way ERCOT works in Texas now, we may still get energy from that.
Oops. We'll figure it out. I'm for phasing them out, like I think most of us are. I think it wastes too much water, and I think the safety concerns that many have for it is the reasons why. And the final thing, phasing it out, and I think it'll push us to renewable energy, force us to go that route even quicker than we wanted to. So I'm really for phasing it out, for again pushing us to renewable energies to meet those goals that we talked about earlier, to cut down on the waterways, and then also to
yeah, I'm actually okay with go ahead and phasing them out. I think we can start working now on maybe open up an opportunity. Maybe in this case, it might be a rare case where we do subsidize a company coming in that can start researching now where we're going to go with our energy when it comes to 2027 and 2028. So at least that way we are prepared when this date comes, and we can say, look, we do have safer alternatives that'll actually be better and create better energy. And maybe it is solar, or maybe it's many other things. But let's invest in that.
All night.
The electricity better stop and bad about it.
Obviously.
Okay, we're bring that back.
Healthcare providers.
Okay, so we're done with the questions, and now we're going to go ahead and move towards the closing statements. You all have 1 minute. That's it.
All right, okay, thank you, Well, I think that we need a scientist on the council. Why? Because we all have opinions, but today's world is getting more and more complicated, and it requires knowledge. Everybody has an opinion, but if you don't have foundations, it's just an occurrence, and we need knowledge. Another thing that I think that I bring to the table is I model. I teach at Garner Betts, and the only reason they hired me was because I was a minority. And kids need a role model that is a minority. I think that I represent the message to the Asian Americans, to the Jewish Americans, to the Hispanic Americans, that they don't have to wait to be third-generation Texans. No. From day numero uno, after you take the pledge, all hands on deck, okay? Because the city of Austin, guys, is in troubled waters, and we need to really solve the problem. I think I send that message, okay, that an immigrant, American by choice, is actually not waiting to be third generation, but doing it right now.
Well, thank you. Thank all of you guys for being here. I'd like to thank IBEW for letting us use this complex here. With the new renewable energy and all this, I don't know how you guys stand on that, because it will displace a lot of the IBEW workers with this new technology that's coming out. I strongly support that we do go into the renewable energy. As far as I'm concerned, I think we all stand and we're all in sync that this is something that we all look forward to. And I support the district, I support the city of Austin and making better decisions for them. And One thing that does bother me is the reckless spending that the city council is doing right now and making it very hard for either one of us to run an effective council by spending all of our money.
Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Sean Ireland, running for City Council in District 3. I am the candidate that will audit Austin Energy, find wasteful spending, and pass the savings along to you. If affordability, infrastructure, and energy independence is as important to you as it is to me, then I am your candidate. My name is Sean Ireland. I'm the fourth name on the ballot. To learn more about me, please go to IrelandForAustin.com. I ask for your vote, and thank you for attending tonight.
I wanted to say, let's not fool ourselves. When I came in this evening, there was a little brief discussion about one of the officers being swept out into a creek today. We lost her. We lost because of rain, because of flooding. Flooding's going to be imminent, and so will wildfires. We know that there's climate change. We know that these things are happening, and they're going to happen more and more frequently. And until we stand up and we actually do something about it rather than just talking about it, which I can do as a councilman based on my public safety experience, I can bring to the table and fix a lot of these errors, a lot of these mistakes. And we can talk about these errors and mistakes at one table together between all public safeties, and to making sure that everything is done correctly and that we don't lose another officer's life. That life was lost today because there should have been fire and EMS there. I thank her for doing her job and being out there, but we lost her. If we had a protocol in place, we could have saved her. Thank you.
It's important that the new District 3 councilwoman understand energy. Not just energy policy, but real-world, on-the-ground experience implementing our utilities programs. I am that person. I am a green jobs employer. I am the only African-American energy auditor and rainwater harvesting professional in Austin. I lead by example. That's what I do. That's what I've done over my entire 30-year career. Scrutinize my record, find out who I am, talk to people about what I've done. They will all tell you the same thing. I do these things not for ego or recognition, but because they're right. My website is www.fredmcgee.com. Don't forget the H after the G, and I look forward to engaging with you after.
I ask for your support for Susana Mansa, number 10 on the ballot for District 3, and also to remember that I've been here for over 45 years working on environmental justice issues, and that climate change is also climate justice. Those are the things we have to look at when we look at District 3, because District 3 is a very low-income community, and the priorities there are affordable housing, transportation, jobs with a living wage of $15, improved health services, equitable transportation, and education. So all of those things go hand in hand with what we're trying to achieve in our energy. But let's not forget who's been here working all the time, who's been to City Council, who's worked with all the environmental groups here in Austin and beyond throughout the world. Didn't just get here, I didn't just start voting, I just didn't start advocating. I've been advocating for the majority of my life for issues, and I want you all to remember that I just didn't get here today or yesterday or last month.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, skipping the gubernatorial debate to listen to us. I hope we were better.
Much better. I'm sure you're much better, actually.
This 10-1 system is a voice of the people in Austin. After 6 tries, they voted to have a representative that lives in their neighborhood, that speaks for them. That's one of the reasons I got into this race, and I got in at a late minute. I was involved in the campaign since February, managing a campaign for my friend Pete Salazar Jr. in District 7. But what I was starting to see in District 3 was candidates that that don't believe in the people, candidates that voted against 10-1. I'm seeing candidates that are fighting with each other within the district, families, stealing each other's signs. Your sign's in my yard, my treasurer's got your sign. We need a candidate that's gonna listen to everybody in the district from north to south, from East 7th to Stasny, and I'm that candidate. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar, for moderating the event, and thanks for everyone else for being here tonight. Like Crystal said, I know this is going to be very, entertaining, maybe to say the least. But I know for many of you, it's difficult to decide amongst 12 who to vote for, right? Especially since a lot of us agree on similar issues, just shades of gray. However, I would like for you to look at other issues and how they relate to energy. I think you'll see that my stances on issues, how they pertain indirectly and directly to energy, and why you should choose me. That's why this November, I, Eric Knahead, ask for your support, and ask for your vote, and ask for you to let me be your voice at City Hall. So together we can be the voice of our community. Thank you.
I want to reiterate that this is a great opportunity for all of us to finally get our own representation in our district. And I'm asking you all to consider me. I come from a family, a military family, that bred into me service, and that's what I want to do for you all. I want to serve this district and represent you appropriately. I think we've heard a lot of people talk about how we're going to lower costs and increase affordability on our homes while helping the environment. And when we can do both of those, we should. But I need to caution those people that smoke is bad for the environment, so stop blowing it. You can't always have both. You can't always do both and get a free pass. Sometimes you have to pick one, and this district has said they want affordability, and that's what I intend to focus on. My name is Kent Phillips, and my website is votekentphillips.com, and Phillips has 2 L's. I'll be second on the ballot.
First, thank you all for your time, and thank you to the other candidates and the moderator for coming out tonight. My name is Jose Valera. I'm number 8 on the ballot. My website is josevalera.com, and I ask for your support in this election. And I think that support will show that you want a strong, capable, and serious advocate for the district who at the same time has the capability, skill set, and temperament to serve the city as a whole on Austin City Council. And I think that it'll also signal that you want a leader who can balance environmental needs, environmental justice needs, the energy needs we have, and the very real affordability concerns we have. Thanks again, Jose Valera, number 8 on the ballot.
Austin needs to be a city that supports its residents while being kind to the environment, and we need leaders who understand that balance. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Austin Environmental Democrats and the Clean Water Action Fund. The mission of Austin Energy is to deliver clean, affordable, reliable energy and excellent customer service, and I don't think that's happening. And we need to move Austin Energy from this culture of dismissing community input and dismissing environmental expert input, and they need to just stop fighting the change. And we need strong council members, and I'm ready to lead that charge with 6 of my other colleagues to make sure that Austin Energy is serving the needs of the community. And I would appreciate your support for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you all for putting this on. I was here a couple weeks ago in this room when we had the informational session. I learned a lot that day, but also I want to thank my colleagues here. I look around a room like this and it makes me feel proud to be an Austinite. I'm sure you all don't need a history lesson of why the 10-1 geographical representation took so long coming about, but it was the cronyism that's run our city hall for way too long. It was a patronizing gentleman's agreement that said we don't need more than one Hispanic member. We don't need more than one African American member on this city council. Well, my district, District 2, is the most heavily Hispanic district in the city. It's the 3rd most highest concentration of African Americans. And I think we need in our district a representative that's not going to be put in place by the same old power structure. If so, it's doing a disservice to the new geographical representation. I would urge you to vote for John Shepherd and go to John C. Shepherd now.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our